Sir, you need to leave. Right now. The words echoed across the graduation stadium so loudly that several parents turned in their seats before they even knew what was happening. Ethan Walker stopped walking. For a brief moment, he simply stood there beneath the bright June sun, holding the folded graduation program in one hand and a small gift box in the other. Around him, hundreds of families filled the aluminum bleachers, their conversations blending with the distant sound of the school band warming up near the field. Nobody looking at Ethan would have guessed that his entire world was about to change. Nobody looking at him would have guessed who he really was. And nobody could have imagined that before this graduation ceremony ended, 6 Navy SEALs would arrive and leave the entire stadium in stunned silence. Ethan slowly turned toward the 2 security guards approaching him. The older guard, Grant Miller, wore a stern expression. Beside him stood a younger officer named Travis Cole, his radio clipped tightly to his shoulder. "Can we help you?" Grant asked, though his tone suggested otherwise. Ethan offered a polite smile. "I'm here for my son's graduation." He held up the program. "My son Noah Walker is graduating today." Travis glanced at Ethan's worn blazer and faded shoes before exchanging a look with his partner. "Do you have a parent wristband?" Ethan looked down at his wrist. "No, sir. The office mailed me this ticket." He carefully removed a folded invitation from his pocket. Grant barely looked at it. "We've received reports about unauthorized guests entering the stadium." Ethan blinked once. "Unauthorized?" "That's right." Ethan remained calm. "I'm not unauthorized. My son invited me." Around them, several nearby parents had stopped talking. A few watched openly now. Others whispered to one another. Ethan could feel the eyes settling on him, but he had long ago learned not to react when people judged him before knowing him. Life had taught him patience. Raising Noah alone had taught him even more. Travis crossed his arms. "Sir, we need you to step outside while we verify your information." Ethan's eyes drifted toward the football field. The graduating seniors were beginning to line up near the 50-yard line. Somewhere among them stood Noah. Somewhere on that field was the young man Ethan had spent 18 years protecting, encouraging, and loving with every ounce of strength he possessed. Missing this moment was not an option. "I understand you're doing your job," Ethan said quietly. "But my son is about to graduate." Grant's expression hardened. "Then you'll need to cooperate." The crowd noise seemed to fade around him. Ethan tightened his grip on the small gift box. Inside was a simple silver watch. Nothing expensive, just something he had saved for over many months. Something Noah had earned. A gentle breeze swept through the stadium, carrying the scent of fresh-cut grass and summer heat. Above the field, an American flag fluttered against a cloudless blue sky. It should have been a perfect day. Instead, Ethan found himself standing in front of 2 guards who seemed determined to remove him before he could watch the most important moment of his son's life. Yet even now, he refused to argue. He refused to raise his voice. Because some battles were not won through anger. Some were won through dignity. And as the first notes of the graduation march began drifting across the stadium speakers, Ethan Walker had no idea that events already set in motion were heading straight toward this field. The graduation march swelled through the stadium speakers as rows of seniors began moving toward their seats on the field. Parents stood to take photographs. Grandparents waved from the bleachers. Excitement floated through the warm afternoon air like sunlight across the green turf. Yet just beyond the entrance tunnel, Ethan Walker remained where he was, caught between 2 security guards and the most important moment of his son's life. Grant extended a hand toward the exit gate. "Sir, this will only take a few minutes." Ethan glanced once more toward the field. Somewhere among the sea of blue graduation gowns was Noah. He could not see his son clearly from here, but he knew the way Noah carried himself. He knew the confidence in his stride. He knew the young man who had spent years overcoming every obstacle life had placed in front of him. Ethan had been there for every step. Every late-night homework assignment, every early morning football practice, every disappointment, every victory. He lowered his eyes briefly and took a slow breath. "My son worked very hard to get here," he said quietly. "I know," Grant replied, though his voice lacked warmth. "But procedures are procedures." Ethan nodded. He understood rules better than most people. Rules had shaped much of his life. Discipline had carried him through difficult years. But there was something else he understood. Promises. Some promises became part of who a person was. Some promises stayed alive long after the people who inspired them were gone. As the distant applause from the crowd rolled across the stadium, a memory surfaced in Ethan's mind. A hospital room filled with soft afternoon light, the faint hum of medical equipment, the gentle squeeze of a hand that had once been his entire world. Sarah Walker had smiled despite her exhaustion. Noah had been only 12 years old then. Frightened, confused, trying desperately to be brave. Ethan remembered every word she had spoken. When he graduates, she had whispered, "Promise me you will be there." Ethan had held her hand tighter. "I will. No matter what," she had asked. His answer had come without hesitation. No matter what. The memory faded, but the promise remained. It had remained through 6 difficult years, through extra shifts, through unpaid bills, through sacrifices nobody ever saw. Ethan looked back toward the field. "I am not leaving," he said calmly. Travis sighed in frustration. "Sir, please do not make this difficult." Ethan's expression never changed. There was no anger in his eyes, no resentment, only quiet determination. Nearby, more spectators had begun watching. Some assumed he had done something wrong. Others simply enjoyed the distraction. Whispers moved through the crowd like a passing breeze. Yet Ethan ignored them all. Public opinion had never mattered much to him. Character mattered. Integrity mattered. Family mattered. On the field, Noah suddenly turned toward the stands as if searching for someone. His eyes scanned the bleachers, then the entrance tunnel, then the crowd beyond. A flicker of concern crossed his face. For the first time that afternoon, Ethan felt a heaviness settle in his chest. Because Noah was looking for him. And Noah was beginning to realize that his father was not where he was supposed to be. Noah Walker tried to keep his eyes forward as the principal stepped to the podium, but his attention kept drifting toward the entrance tunnel. The ceremony had officially begun. Names would soon be called. Parents were smiling, cameras were flashing, and families were settling into memories they would cherish for years. Yet something felt wrong. His father should have been sitting near the front. Ethan had promised he would be there. And Ethan Walker never broke a promise. Noah shifted slightly in his chair and looked again toward the stadium entrance. He caught a glimpse of movement near the gate. 2 security guards. A small gathering of curious spectators. Then he saw the familiar outline of his father's worn blazer. Relief appeared for a second. Then confusion replaced it. Why was his father still standing outside? Beside Noah sat a classmate named Tyler Benson. Tyler followed Noah's gaze. "Everything okay?" he whispered. Noah hesitated. "My dad is out there." Tyler looked toward the entrance. Maybe they are checking tickets. Noah wanted to believe that, but something inside him knew otherwise. On the other side of the field, a wealthy local businessman named Richard Caldwell sat comfortably in the reserved seating section. Caldwell was one of the school's largest donors. His family name appeared on plaques throughout the campus. As he glanced toward the disturbance near the gate, his expression tightened. "Who is that man?" he asked the school administrator seated beside him. The administrator adjusted her glasses. "I'm not sure." Caldwell frowned. "Security should handle it. Today is supposed to be a respectable event." The administrator nodded nervously. A few moments later, another message quietly reached the security team. The request was simple. Resolve the situation quickly. Back near the entrance, Grant Miller listened to instructions through his radio. His posture became even more rigid. Travis folded his arms. "Sir, we have been more than patient." Ethan remained calm. "I appreciate that. Then please cooperate." Ethan glanced at the field once more. Noah was visible now between rows of graduates. For a brief second, father and son made eye contact across the distance. Neither smiled. Neither waved. Yet in that single moment, both understood exactly what the other was feeling. Noah saw concern in his father's eyes. Ethan saw disappointment in his son's. The realization hurt far more than any public embarrassment ever could. A warm breeze swept across the stadium. Graduation banners fluttered gently along the fences. The sound system crackled as the principal began welcoming families and guests. It should have been a moment of celebration. Instead, Noah felt helpless. Memories flooded his mind. His father waking before sunrise to drive delivery routes. His father helping with science projects after exhausting workdays. His father sitting beside him through every setback, every failure, every doubt. Ethan had never missed anything important. Not once. "Come on, Dad," Noah whispered to himself. "Please." But what neither Noah nor anyone else in the stadium realized was that far beyond the school grounds, a phone call had already been made. And the people receiving that call were not the kind of men who ignored a debt of gratitude. The ceremony continued, and to everyone watching, Ethan Walker appeared to be nothing more than an ordinary father causing an inconvenience at a school event. That assumption could not have been further from the truth. Years earlier, long before he became a delivery driver, long before he spent weekends repairing neighbors' fences for extra income, Ethan had lived a very different life. He had traveled places that never appeared on maps. He had worked beside men whose names rarely appeared in public records. He had carried responsibilities that could not be discussed at family dinners or neighborhood gatherings. Yet none of those things were what defined him now. Fatherhood did. Raising Noah did. The greatest achievement of Ethan's life had never been connected to a uniform, a title, or a commendation. It had been helping a frightened 12-year-old boy navigate life after losing his mother. While the principal welcomed guests from the stage, Ethan stood quietly near the entrance fence and watched his son from a distance. The sunlight reflected off the rows of graduation caps. The crowd applauded another speaker. Somewhere nearby, a child laughed. The world kept moving forward, unaware of the history, standing only a few yards away. Grant glanced at Ethan. There was something unusual about him. Most people in this situation would have become angry. Some would have shouted. Others would have demanded special treatment. Ethan did none of those things. He simply waited. Calm, patient, unshaken. It was the kind of composure that could only come from years of discipline. "You seem awfully relaxed for someone being escorted out," Travis said. Ethan offered a small smile. "Life teaches you what matters." Travis frowned. "And what is that?" Ethan looked toward the field. "Family." The answer lingered in the air longer than either guard expected. On the field, Noah listened to speeches he barely heard. His thoughts kept returning to his father. He remembered being 8 years old and waking from a nightmare during a thunderstorm. Ethan had sat beside him all night. He remembered struggling in mathematics during middle school. Ethan had spent countless evenings helping him improve. He remembered wanting to quit football after a disappointing season. Ethan had taught him that character mattered more than temporary failure. Every important lesson in Noah's life traced back to one person. That was why seeing his father treated like a problem felt so wrong. Meanwhile, several miles away, a retired history teacher named Margaret Ellis ended a phone call and stared at her screen. Margaret had taught at the school for nearly 3 decades before retiring. She recognized Ethan immediately when she heard what was happening. More importantly, she remembered something others had forgotten. Years ago, during a Veterans Day assembly, Ethan had quietly declined public recognition. Yet afterward, Margaret had overheard several visiting military officers speaking about him with extraordinary respect. Their words had stayed with her ever since. Concerned by what she had learned, she scrolled through an old contact list and made another call. The man who answered listened carefully. He asked only a few questions. Then he became silent. Very silent. Finally, he replied with a simple sentence. "Thank you for letting me know." Margaret ended the call without realizing that the person she had just spoken to was already reaching for his keys. The graduation ceremony moved forward one name at a time, but for Noah Walker, every minute felt longer than the last. The principal continued speaking. Families applauded. Cameras flashed beneath the bright afternoon sun. Yet Noah could not shake the feeling that something important was happening beyond the stadium gates. Near the entrance, Ethan remained standing quietly. Grant checked his radio again. Travis scanned the crowd. Neither guard noticed how often Ethan's eyes returned to the field. He was not worried about himself. He was worried about Noah. A father waits for many moments in life. First steps. First day of school. First heartbreak. First victory. Graduation was supposed to be one of those moments. Ethan had imagined it for years. He had imagined watching Noah walk across that stage. He had imagined handing him the small silver watch afterward. He had imagined telling him how proud his mother would have been. Instead, he found himself standing outside the celebration, separated by only a few yards that somehow felt like miles. Across the stadium, Richard Caldwell noticed the situation had not disappeared. "Why is that man still here?" he asked impatiently. The school administrator shifted uncomfortably. "Security is handling it." Caldwell frowned. "Good. We do not need distractions today." His words carried influence. People listened when he spoke. That had been true for years. What Caldwell did not know was that influence comes in many forms. Some come from money. Others come from respect earned over a lifetime. Nearly 20 miles away, a black pickup truck rolled out of a private driveway. Behind the wheel sat Commander Ryan Hayes. His expression remained calm, but his eyes never left the road. He had listened carefully during the phone call. He had asked one question. Was the information accurate? When Margaret Ellis assured him it was, he thanked her and immediately made several calls of his own. Each conversation lasted less than 30 seconds. No explanations were needed. No convincing was required. Certain names carried their own weight. Ethan Walker was one of those names. As Ryan drove, another vehicle merged onto the highway behind him. Then another. Then another. Men with different careers, different lives, and different schedules had all received the same message. A graduation ceremony. A father being denied the respect he deserved. A man who had spent years helping others now standing alone. The response was immediate. Back at the school, Noah's name moved steadily closer to the top of the graduation list. Anxiety settled deeper into his chest. He glanced again toward the entrance. Ethan saw him. Their eyes met for only a second. Ethan offered the smallest nod. A simple gesture. Yet Noah understood it immediately. It meant the same thing it had always meant throughout his life. Stay focused. Keep going. I am here. Noah swallowed hard and faced forward again. The crowd continued applauding another graduate. The breeze carried the scent of summer grass across the field. Everything appeared normal. But far beyond the stadium, engines were turning, roads were narrowing, and 6 men were heading toward a place where gratitude was about to become impossible to ignore. The first sign was so subtle that almost nobody paid attention. A distant rumble drifted across the warm afternoon air beyond the stadium parking lot. Most people assumed it was traffic from the nearby highway. The graduation ceremony continued uninterrupted. Another student crossed the stage. Families applauded. The principal smiled for photographs. Life seemed perfectly ordinary. Then the sound grew louder. Heads slowly began turning toward the main entrance road. Grant Miller noticed it first. He glanced beyond the gate and narrowed his eyes. What is that? Travis followed his gaze. In the distance, several dark vehicles were approaching in a neat line. Not speeding, not creating a scene, just moving with quiet purpose. On the field, Noah barely noticed at first. His attention remained fixed on his father. Ethan still stood near the entrance, calm as ever, holding the small gift box in one hand. The silver watch inside remained untouched. The moment he had imagined for years still felt painfully out of reach. Yet something about the approaching vehicles caused a subtle change in the atmosphere around him. Ethan heard the engines too. He looked toward the road and immediately recognized the disciplined spacing between the vehicles. His expression remained unchanged, but a memory flickered behind his eyes. Years of training, years of teamwork, years spent beside people who understood loyalty as more than a word. Nearby spectators began whispering. Who was arriving? One parent asked. Maybe school officials, another guessed. Richard Caldwell adjusted his sunglasses and frowned toward the entrance. He did not like surprises. The administrator beside him looked equally confused. No arrival had been scheduled. No special guests were expected. Yet the line of vehicles continued rolling forward. One by one, they entered the parking area. Their dark paint reflected the afternoon sunlight. Their movements were smooth, deliberate, and strangely coordinated. The graduation speakers continued talking, but fewer people were listening now. Curiosity spread through the crowd like a ripple across still water. Even Travis seemed distracted. Do you know them? He asked Ethan. Ethan offered only a polite smile. Not yet. The answer confused the young guard even more. The first vehicle came to a stop, then the second, then the third. Doors remained closed for a moment. The entire scene felt suspended in time. A breeze moved across the football field. Graduation banners fluttered gently. Somewhere in the distance a bird crossed the bright blue sky. Then the doors opened. Several men stepped out. Their appearance was simple, clean, professional. There were no dramatic gestures, no raised voices. Yet something about their presence immediately commanded attention. They moved with confidence born from experience rather than ego. One after another they emerged and quietly gathered beside the vehicles. Noah stared from the field. Grant stared from the entrance. Richard Caldwell stared from the front row. The conversations around the stadium gradually faded. Ethan remained still. His eyes followed the men as they began walking toward the gate. And for the first time all afternoon, a faint expression of recognition appeared on his face. The 6 men walked through the entrance without hesitation, their attention focused on only one person. Conversations throughout the stadium faded into uneasy silence as parents, teachers, and students watched them move forward. Nobody recognized them at first. They wore simple civilian clothing. No uniforms. No announcements. No attempt to draw attention. Yet there was something unmistakable about the way they carried themselves. Years of discipline seemed to follow them like a shadow. Grant Miller stepped forward instinctively. "Gentlemen, can I help you?" The man leading the group stopped. His hair showed traces of gray around the temples, and his calm expression reflected the confidence of someone completely comfortable under pressure. "We are looking for Ethan Walker," he said. Grant glanced toward Ethan. "Why?" The man turned and followed Grant's gaze. The moment he saw Ethan, everything changed. A warm smile appeared across his face. For a second, he looked less like a respected leader and more like an old friend who had finally found someone important. Ethan's expression softened as well. "Ryan," he said quietly. Commander Ryan Hayes closed the remaining distance between them. The other 5 men followed. By now, hundreds of eyes were watching. Noah had risen slightly from his chair on the field. Even the principal paused mid-sentence as confusion spread through the audience. Ryan stopped directly in front of Ethan. Neither man spoke for a moment. Some relationships require no introduction. Some respect is built across years rather than words. Then Ryan straightened his posture. The 5 men beside him did the same. Without warning, all 6 stood at attention. The movement was so precise and synchronized that an audible murmur swept across the stadium. Ethan looked almost uncomfortable. "Ryan, you did not have to do this," he said. Ryan smiled. "Actually, we did." Then, before anyone could process what was happening, all 6 men raised their hands in a formal salute. Complete silence followed. The stadium that had been filled with applause, conversations, and music only moments earlier became still. Noah stared in disbelief. Grant stared. Travis stared. Even Richard Caldwell leaned forward in his seat, suddenly aware that the man he had dismissed might not be who he assumed. Ethan slowly shook his head. "You are making a scene." Ryan laughed softly. "No, Ethan. We are correcting one." The words landed with unexpected weight. Around them, spectators exchanged confused glances. Nobody understood the full story yet, but everyone could feel that something important was unfolding. Ryan lowered his salute and looked toward the field where Noah sat among the graduates. "That your son?" Ethan nodded proudly. "Today is his day." Ryan followed Ethan's gaze and smiled. "Then let us make sure his father gets to see it." As the afternoon breeze moved through the stadium and graduation banners fluttered overhead, the atmosphere had completely changed. The questions were growing. The assumptions were disappearing. And for the first time all day, people began looking at Ethan Walker not with suspicion, but with curiosity and respect. For several seconds, nobody spoke. The silence itself seemed to become part of the ceremony. Parents who had been checking their phones now watched intently. Students who had been chatting among themselves sat still. Even the principal remained frozen beside the podium, unsure whether to continue. Ryan Hayes looked around the stadium and immediately understood what had happened. He had seen that look before. Assumptions. Quick judgments. People deciding who someone was before learning their story. He turned back toward Ethan. "You still hate attention, do not you?" Ethan sighed softly. "You know me too well." One of the other men smiled. "That has always been your problem." A few nearby spectators laughed nervously, unsure what was happening. Grant cleared his throat. "Sir, if I may ask, how do you all know Mr. Walker?" Ryan looked at Ethan for permission. Ethan shook his head slightly. He did not want a spectacle. He never had. But Ryan also understood something important. Respect sometimes required truth. "Years ago," Ryan began calmly, "a lot of us came home because of this man." The crowd grew even quieter. Ryan pointed gently toward Ethan. Not because he wanted credit. Not because he wanted recognition. Simply because that is who he is. Another member of the group nodded. When things became difficult, Ethan was the person everyone trusted. "Still is," another added. Ethan lowered his eyes for a moment, clearly uncomfortable with the praise. He had spent years building a life far away from titles and accomplishments. Yet gratitude has a way of finding people no matter how far they walk from the spotlight. On the field, Noah listened carefully. Each word felt like another piece of a puzzle he had never fully understood. His father had never talked much about his past. There had been photographs tucked away in boxes, a few medals stored in a closet, occasional visits from old friends who always treated Ethan with unusual respect. But Ethan never explained much. Whenever Noah asked, his father always gave the same answer. The important thing is what we do for people now. Suddenly, those words carried new meaning. Ryan looked toward Noah and smiled. Your father spent years helping people without asking for anything in return. He turned back toward the crowd. And the truth is, he never stopped. Several people lowered their eyes. Richard Caldwell shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The administrator beside him looked embarrassed. Grant and Travis exchanged glances. Neither man had intended to disrespect Ethan, yet both now realized how little they actually knew about him. The afternoon sun hung low above the stadium. The breeze had settled. Everything felt still. Then Ryan spoke the sentence that changed the atmosphere completely. The greatest thing Ethan Walker ever did was not what happened in his career. It was raising that young man sitting on the field. Every eye turned toward Noah. Emotion tightened in his throat. And for the first time, all afternoon, the entire stadium began to understand who Ethan Walker truly was. The principal finally stepped away from the microphone and looked toward Ethan with genuine respect. The uncertainty that had hovered over the stadium all afternoon had disappeared. In its place stood something far more powerful: understanding. Grant Miller removed his cap and approached Ethan first. Sir, he said quietly, I owe you an apology. Travis nodded immediately. So do I. Ethan looked at both men and offered the same calm smile he had carried throughout the day. You were doing your jobs. Grant lowered his eyes. Maybe, but we should have treated you better. Ethan simply extended his hand. Grant shook it. Then Travis did the same. The tension that had defined the afternoon quietly dissolved. Nearby, Richard Caldwell sat motionless. For the first time all day, he seemed unsure of what to say. Influence, wealth, and status suddenly felt much smaller than character. Meanwhile, on the field, the graduation ceremony resumed. One by one, students crossed the stage. Applause returned. Families smiled again. Yet the atmosphere had changed. Every person present now seemed a little more aware of the people around them, a little slower to judge, a little quicker to appreciate. Then the moment arrived. Noah Walker. The principal's voice echoed through the stadium. Noah stood. For a brief second, he did not move toward the stage. Instead, he turned toward the entrance, toward his father, toward the man who had sacrificed countless hours, opportunities, and dreams so that his son could pursue his own. Ethan stood quietly among the crowd. The small gift box remained in his hand. Noah's eyes glistened. Then he walked forward. The applause grew louder with every step. He accepted his diploma and turned toward the audience. The principal smiled. Would you like to say a few words? Noah had not planned a speech. Yet standing there beneath the summer sky, looking at the thousands of faces surrounding him, he realized there was only one thing he truly wanted to say. He stepped to the microphone. The stadium became silent once more. Everyone keeps talking about accomplishments today. Noah began. Grades, scholarships, future plans. He paused and looked directly at Ethan. But everything good in my life started with one person. The crowd listened carefully. My father taught me what hard work looks like. He taught me what integrity looks like. He taught me that real strength is staying kind when life gives you every reason not to be. Emotion tightened his voice. People see a graduation today. I see 18 years of sacrifice. Ethan lowered his head slightly. Noah smiled through tears. Dad, this diploma belongs to both of us. For a moment, nobody moved. Then the applause began. It started with one person, then another, then another. Soon the entire stadium was standing. Ethan never stepped onto the stage. He never asked for recognition. He never mentioned his past. He simply waited as Noah walked back across the field and into his arms. Above them, the American flag moved gently in the afternoon breeze. Around them, the applause continued. But between father and son, there was only quiet gratitude. And sometimes, that kind of silence says more than words ever could.